They were recording. Cool. So, Matt, Jake, you guys are the first two who had reached out to me in my attempt to become a better basketball player. My attempt to go pro as a 31-year-old dad. And you guys reached out with the opportunity to play with y'all on Everline Drive and the TBT. And the number of people that have asked, there's like two categories, like a group of people who know what the TBT is, who are basketball heads. And then there's like other people who are like the basketball tournament. I'm like, well, continue. Like, what is that? Um, so just I would love to hear your guys' story because as someone who's followed the TBT from basically the genesis of it, I knew who you guys were, your name, but not everyone else does. And I think it's a fun backstory to kind of hear and makes more sense maybe why you guys reached out to me.
Go ahead, Jake. You can go first.
Yeah, so our team name is Everline Drive. We play in the basketball tournament, which very simply is a 64 team single elimination tournament for a winner take all $1 million prize. And it'll be played on Fox Sports and on thetournament.com. And who we are is Everline Drive. We're one of two teams that's been in it every single year. This will be our 11th summer competing. We're named after a little dead end street in Fraser, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit that I grew up on. In the first TBT back in 2014, me and my friends just played in it, realized, we're not professional basketball players. So Matt and I teamed up and started recruiting real basketball players who play professionally overseas to play for us. And honestly, that's kind of what led us to inviting you to the squad. You're really kind of an embodiment of what Everline Drive was at the start. It's people who just love basketball. And at its heart, TBT is still a tournament that is open to everyone. And while Everline kind of is the little guy that can, in a field that's mostly alumni teams and teams with huge sponsors and huge backing, we're kind of the little man that could. And, we like to see someone like you who, like us, just loves basketball and wants to compete.
Yeah, I'll comment there too. You guys are kind of humble about your guys' team. The little guy that could is part of it, but it's kind of went like blue chip style, and so you guys went and got a bunch of dudes the next year. Um, and you guys have guys on the team this year, obviously, who are very high caliber players. Which I think in of itself, you guys should have like an ESPN 30 for 30 because your guys' initial story, it is almost like a TV show where it's like you went in there and it's like, oh, this competition was a certain type of way, and you come back next year with you got second place the next year. Is that correct?
It took us a few years
Yeah.
to kind of get our first W, and then once we got that first win in 2017, then yeah, we had a runner up in 2018, Elite Eight 2019, and we've been battling ever since.
And so I know people ask, and I've actually had conversations with you know people who follow basketball. It's changed the TBT in of itself quite a bit, right? When it first started, it really was like they had these like four locations, I'm pretty sure, or a couple locations. Teams would go to those locations and play. People didn't really know what to expect. I remember certain teams just had like pennies on, like really basic uniforms, if I recall correctly. And it was kind of like a hodgepodge versus now we're playing at Hinkle Fieldhouse with Butler, and Butler has an alumni team, and Indiana has an alumni team. And it seems like it's becoming this. I think it really popped off with Wichita State when they hosted it there, and they realized, oh my
Yep.
goodness, all these people really do care about basketball. And you have that. I want to say, was it 10,000 people they had there watching those games, something like that, a packed house. So from your perspective, how this thing has grown, I'd love to hear a little bit about that because I have seen like when it first started, it was like, oh, I remember that guy played basketball like 10 years ago. Like that was fun to watch. And you'd be like, oh, I remember that guy. Jason Williams played and he's been out of the league for like, I don't know, 14 years at that point. And now you look at our team here and it's like, oh, that guy is actually in the G League. And this guy is like competing for an NBA spot. Like these are real
Yep.
dudes who'll come and play. And it seems like the league has grown quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I would say, Jake and I have had the opportunity to experience from its inception till now. And so we have seen that growth, that trajectory that just continues to get better and better each year as far as organization, the teams that are entering, the talent of players that are playing in it. But yeah, so year one, like a lot of people didn't know what to expect. You show up at the time, it was just one arena, actually, Philadelphia. think my wife and mom and dad were the only people in the crowd for the first tip-off game. We were like an 8:30 a.m. tip-off of the first TBT. And it's grown to your point, Wichita State in a July afternoon has 7,500, 10,000 fans in the arena going crazy for their former, alumni. And so it's been a ton of fun to be on that journey and kind of grow with the tournament. And so, yeah, it's changed a lot. I think with that, the alumni have really helped um, get more eyes on the tournament. You obviously have huge alumni networks that want to tune in and follow the guys they've been cheering for years prior. But you have guys that are, like you said, former NBA guys, like a Jason Williams, Mike Bibby have played in TBT. That's not quite as common anymore because most of the guys playing now are active pros making major money, making a living for their families, still playing professional basketball. And so there's less of like the has-beens, if you will, still elite basketball players. But these are all guys that are playing competitively and making a living playing basketball. And so this tournament, what I argue is some of the best basketball outside of the NBA every year. And so you have fringe NBA guys, EuroLeague guys that are playing in a tournament that's single elimination. So just that in of itself adds unique flair and dynamic. And then you put $1 million on the line, it creates for some really compelling basketball. So it's been a ton of fun to be a part of from the beginning and see how it's grown.
So I have a bias because I've always thought about this from the TBT. I've been a TBT fan since the genesis. I love the idea of it. I always love the idea of $1 million prize. It seems like some sort of like, crazy pipe dream that's a fun, you only hear about in movies. But what I found interesting is that the crowd and energy around these alumni games and teams, it's so much greater than what can be generated from, I mean, no hate on the NBA, like a lot of the G League stuff. I mean, I've had players I've worked with be in the G League. I've watched their 7 people in the crowd games. I've gone to them personally. Versus the energy in these alumni kind of fostered events, I'd call it. It always makes me wonder, and you don't need to give too direct of an answer because it's a little bit off the cuff. If this is a route that would be a better route long term, sustainability wise, for people who love college basketball and then people who aren't in the NBA, and this is like purgatory of a G League versus why isn't there some sort of continuation of college basketball, but in a professional sense that does foster the development for these players to go elsewhere versus like a TBT league seems like even if there's like 10 games or 12 games, something very reasonable because the crowd turnout at these events, I could never get over it. Like, oh my gosh, there's 10,000 people cheering for Fran Camp again, if I say his name correctly, for Wichita State. I'm like, I haven't,
Yep.
like, it's crazy because people love the team versus just, and they love the players who played for them. So I'd be curious, you guys have seen this since day one and obviously been a part of it. Like, that's always been something I always wish could happen for them in that tournament. Is that something that you guys would ever, not speaking for the TBT, just as observers and participants of it, see how that would make sense in the future?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, Matt and I, we've played in games where there have been like no fans. And I think this setup of alumni is way better in terms of getting people in the seats, and the environments will be great, no doubt.
And just to add to that, Max, I think, the I grew up a college sports fan. My mom was an Iowa Hawkeye. My dad was a Michigan State Spartan. So like college sports is what I grew up on. Obviously, I love NBA basketball and still do to this day. But you're right. Like just the fan engagement and the uh, in the NBA, teams are revolving doors. There's rookies. There's free agents. There's not as much. There is some loyalty, I suppose. But like college sports is crazy. So like I said, Wichita State or we've had Buffalo teams that have won, Marquette, like these teams that have come out year after year in TBT and done well and brought out big crowds. I think there's definitely a market for it if you can figure out a way to put some type of league or season together beyond just even a 1 week tournament would be a ton of fun.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I'll put it that way. Like as a
Yeah,
fan, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching the fans like root for them. I thought that was like a fun thing to see, a loyalness. And they would have guys who aren't part of like Wichita State alumni. I use Wichita State because that's recently one in my head where
yeah,
and they had a guy who wasn't an alumni playing on it, and they like welcomed him like part of the family. I was like, oh, that's really cool because it's just the team loving it. But then every team in that same host area, I think there's an edge to it, right? You want to quiet the crowd. You want
Oh
to
yeah. Yep.
you're like, I remember this. Like, let's put an end to this real quick.
Right. Right.
Being that we are a team not in the host area, I think it's a nice little segue to talk about. We're going to be at Hinkle Fieldhouse, right in Butler. I think Butler's
Hmm.
the host. Is that correct?
Yep.
And
Yep.
Indiana has their alumni team there. And you guys are not an alumni team. You're kind of like how do you call it? Like a private team or whatever, a mercenary team, which means your roster is ever changing. But I want to talk about this year's roster specifically and go through some of the guys we currently have on there.
Yeah.
Um, and then kind of talking about, because I know some of them have played with you before in the past, and you have some new guys as well.
Yeah. No, I think, like you said, we're not an alumni team. We're not just even from a geographic location where you might have guys all from Philadelphia or all from Miami that put a team in together. We are, you call us mercenaries, we're kind of more of like an all-star team that just picks players from across the country. And so with that, it gives us a lot of flexibility and autonomy to really pick who we feel are the best players to help us win. And so, ultimately the familiarity and chemistry you have in a team certainly helps when you have an alumni network because you just have that built in. And so we do our best to try to find guys that have relationships with one another that have played with us in the past that want to come back to try to expedite and make that happen as quick as possible. So yeah, this year we'll have a few guys that have played with us in the past and several new faces. And ultimately, part of Jake and I's job each year and working with our other coaches and staff is to hand pick what we feel are not only the most talented or best players, but are going to be the right type of players to gel and mesh quickly and come together in a tournament like this.
Oh, goodbye, Jake. We lost Jake for a second. I'll see if he rejoins. Um, one of the things I wanted to ask about like the roster formation um, is the fact that, well, I think twofold. One, when you're playing in these types of tournaments, people have other jobs typically outside of the tournament. Like this isn't their primary means of basketball. And so while people say, "Oh, you see it like you're playing and they're in a tournament," the run up time is so small, right? It's like
Yeah,
basically a couple of days, especially for guys who are maybe like fringe NBA guys. They don't want to spend a month preparing for what's not their
yep,
main season.
yep.
How do you guys go about managing that aspect of it and then expectations within that? Because I know it's kind of there's twofold. There's one, the logistical aspects, but then secondly, the expectations of all right, you're not going to be here, but when you get here, let's try and do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, no. First and foremost, these guys are all playing professional basketball. Every one of our guys have been playing all last season, and first week of August, if they're playing overseas, they're going to head back overseas with their families or without their families. So we recognize that their summer and their off season is precious time, and so it's very unlikely or nearly impossible that we'd ever get them to come to town for a month of training camp and really prepare, right? And so we do our best in a short period of time to, um, you know, get guys to town. So we'll have guys come in a few days early. And our pitch to them is, look, you're going to be playing basketball regardless. Most likely, you're going to be getting runs in with pickup or training with your trainers or getting workouts in on your own. We're going to give you an opportunity to get that same work in with elite level coaches that are going to put them through workouts and training in the days leading up to TBT. But ultimately, in a very high structured, organized event, give them 5-on-5 opportunity as well to continue to play and stay active. Unlike, we've had guys that look at TBT sometimes as maybe a risk or a potential, chance they could get injured before they go back overseas, or it could compromise a contract or something they have. The argument we make, while we fully respect that, and ultimately they want to look after their best interest, which is their careers, we recognize they're probably going to be playing anyways. And so the argument or the point we make is in TBT, it's going to be officiated with some of the top officials in the world. It's really regulated and organized. We're going to take really good care of you from an organization standpoint because you just have to show up and play ball. And so I think there's a lot of things that go into that. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of moving parts logistically to manage and get all these guys to come from all over the place to try to make it happen for a couple weeks.
No, that makes total sense. And like I say, if you can go play pickup, like you kind of run a risk of, someone running
Right.
underneath you or not taking care, being half effort when you're going full effort.
Yep.
versus everyone's competing. It's an opportunity kind of mid off season to see where you are physically. A
Hmm.
lot of these players get a chance to say, okay, well, I need this rhythm, I need that rhythm. I'm going to build up into it anyway. What's better than actually doing it in front of people in a crowd,
Yep.
TV? And there are opportunities produced from it, like Kiefer Sykes famously, I said that famously in terms of the TBT world, got his Exhibit 10 from playing really well in the classic, whatever TBT run he had, and that
Yep.
got him some NBA looks. And I know people have had opportunities from these events to get kind of higher level looks. And at a minimum, game tape against players who are they can have comps against. So there is
Yeah.
benefits beyond just like playing. There's also like as a basketball player, you got to build a resume. As weird as that sounds to a lot of people who don't realize it, you got to have some tape to showcase to people.
Yep.
I want to jump ahead and ask this for you two. What's the hardest thing about this whole thing? Like, as someone who's just kind of invited and able to try and compete, like myself, I can only imagine from your logistical side how much of a headache this can be. I'm curious as to how early you start doing this, and then some of the biggest obstacles and hurdles you have along the way.
Jake, you want to go first? Take a stab at it? Maybe not. He's froze again. I'll go. Um, yeah, so it's absolutely a ton of time and energy that goes into it. You ask when does it start or how much time goes in. I mean, TBT will wrap up that first week of August. Usually let it simmer and kind of enjoy the last few weeks of summer, and then these guys start going to play overseas or in the G League, and it just kind of starts that calendar back up of recruiting and building relationships. Because the reality is, for all the non-alumni teams, we're recruiting from a very small pool. If you're one of the top elite players, and so you got to build trust, you got to build relationships, and that takes just time. And so we spend a lot of time scouting, recruiting players while they're playing professionally overseas or in the G League. If we can, we try to go catch games of guys that have played for us in the past. Um, so that's from like the player recruitment side of things. It really ramps up after the new year. So January, February is when TBT kind of starts to get on the forefront of people's minds, at least that are considering playing. But there's a lot of time before that. And then, you ask what's the most difficult thing. Honestly, the most difficult thing is paying for the whole situation. Neither Jake nor I are independently wealthy. We've been really fortunate to make it work and figure it out year after year and put ourselves in a position to continue to compete in this tournament. There's been a lot of teams that have maybe fallen out or fizzled out for one reason or another. I would only assume that a lot of that is probably related to their ability to fundraise and pay for the whole thing. I know how much it kind of goes into it. We like to treat our players really well, put them up in nice hotels, cover their transportation. We have gear, equipment, all sorts of things that we invest in to take care of our players and make it a good experience for them so they want to come back year after year. And with that is just, some significant expense. This year, for the first year, there's actually a TBT entry fee as well, which there hadn't been in the past. There was different they've dabbled with different ways to pick the field or select the field. Started with fan engagement and getting people to vote for you. It moved to kind of more of just like a selection committee, and then this year it was a combination of kind of a selection, but ultimately it was if you could put the money up to enter a team, you had a spot in the field. And so with that, that's by far the probably the biggest burden or heavy lift for Jake and I. A lot of outreach to individuals or companies or people that we think might see value in the promotion or the social media collaborations that we could do. But that's what I would say is probably the most difficult thing. Jake, anything to add to that?
No, I agree. Like, getting players is difficult, but TBT and Everline Drive like has a name now, so people know about it and know about our team when we reach out to them. But going back to sponsors year after year is the most difficult part for sure, I would say, from what the work we have to do, that's the hard part. And then we trust the players to go do the really hard part, which is play.
I still think if someone's listening to this when I post it, that you guys should have like, I'm not sure how there's not some sort of like Netflix documentary or something like that where it's following this endeavor between you two, trying to piece together people, trying to put together a roster, trying to organize it all, get the coaches lined up, go and play in $1 million tournament. I mean, my gosh, that's like a very Hollywood type script as it is. I mean, it's pretty tasty in regards to content and the natural trials and tribulations that come with it. And then, as my business mind says, like you could have people sponsor that along the way. So if you guys have a willing videographer out there or someone who is talking to the audience that might hear this, someone who's be interested in that documentation, man, you two would it'd be so interesting to watch because you'd have the collision of logistics mixing with the actual competition of the tournament in the run up into it. Obviously, the ups and downs of people bailing and people accepting and getting different people in
Right.
and out with those kind of natural storylines. I think that'd be so cool. Anything else you guys want to add to this? I know we're going to do a short little video here, not too long, just give everyone a background on what this TBT ordeal is, or anything that you guys care to share before we wrap it up.
No, I don't think so, Max. I'm excited to have you be a part of it. Obviously, you having kind of watched it from afar and being a fan. Um, I think one, just physically being there, I'm not sure if you ever attended a game in person, but the atmosphere, the competition, like that in and of itself is awesome. I always, I have friends and family that know what I do, and I feel like a lot of them don't even realize what TBT is still, and how what I think is how big of a deal it actually is. And so seeing it in person, I think helps that. But then for you, I'm excited to have an opportunity to actually be a part of it. And compete and be a part of a team. I think what I miss most about playing from my playing days, I graduated in 2011 and haven't played competitively too much since. But what I miss most is the competition, the camaraderie, the hanging out with the guys before, after the games, the preparation. And so I can only imagine for someone like you that's kind of on this journey back to try to compete and play, like you're probably itching for that opportunity as well. And so I'm excited for you to get a chance to taste it. I know each and every year this is what I look forward to because throughout the year, while there's a ton of time that goes into it, why I do it is for that chance every summer to compete and get to hang out with guys like yourself. And some of the best stories or times even that we've had through TBT is just sitting around a meal and talking about stories. We've had NBA vet Marcus Thornton talking about his first time guarding Kobe Bryant and things like that. That as a kid, I still feel like I'm a kid sometimes. Now I'm older than most of these guys that play for me. That's the stuff I also really enjoy. So, yeah, TBT is awesome. Jake and I are crazy. We've been doing it this long. I say this all the time. I'm going to try to do this until I win one TBT title, and then I'll try to win 10 more. So, probably call me delusional more than anything, but it's a ton of fun. I'm excited for you to be a part of it this summer, Max.
Yeah, I'm obviously excited too. Grateful for the opportunity. I think it's awesome because no one probably thinks they can do anything, which is the greatest place to be. I'm playing with house's money. Someone asked me, like, "Hey, you're afraid?" I said, "I'm afraid of my mortgage, man. I'm not afraid of this." I said, "I already lost my career once, and I am not afraid to go play basketball again. I've already sat in my dorm room and cried my senior year. Like I
Right.
all wrapped up and done. This is
Yep.
the zombie of basketball here. So I'm far from concerned, and I know I can take and make shots. So that's basically two things I'm good at, is not really being worried about something and being able to shoot inordinately um, difficult shots. And both things kind of lean into being old. So I appreciate my own oldness there. It probably gets some good up and unders. But I'm excited to be there with you guys and really compete. It'd be fun because I know it's a real deal. And someone's asked me like, "What's the biggest thing I feel?" It's like just the unknown. Like I haven't put a jersey on in 10 years. Like yeah,
Yeah.
it's one thing to go play, but if someone had me, go, "Hey, you're gonna go through a layup line again," I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I forgot about that." Like
Right.
um that's something I haven't even considered. So it's fun, it's exciting. But again, thankful for you two to go and do it. Like I said from my end, I just wanted to be transparent from the very beginning. Like and you guys have been as well. It's not like, hey, we bring it on, Max, and like let's show a clip of him like dunking the basketball. And like, who the hell is this guy? Like I totally get it. And that's what I am. And so for me, that's very fun and appreciate you guys having me be a part of this. And I want to get another one of these little discussions, if not one or two more going into it. And so I'd love to hear more like strategies type stuff, how you guys organize the practices, how you guys organize the run up, how you guys select the coaches and everything. But as just an entry piece into the TBT and who I'm playing with, I think this has been awesome.
Awesome, Max. No, we'd happy to jump on again and talk through any more. If you have any fans that reach out or have questions, we could run through those questions as well. But really appreciate the time today, and we're looking forward to the next several weeks and the lead up to TBT this summer.
Absolutely. I'm going to end the recording, but I have some questions for you after. So I'm going to have to stop recording here.